Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a stack of sources shared by you, the listener. And these sources, they really challenge some of the comfortable ideas we have about high achievement.
Yeah, they definitely do.
We're not just talking about, being successful in a general sense.
Mm.
We're diving into the actual mindset you need for truly world-class results, the kind that really sets people apart.
That's absolutely right. Our goal here is really to give you a kind of shortcut to the core principles behind elite personal growth. These sources, well, they don't mince words.
No, they don't.
They strip away all the romantic stuff about instant breakthroughs. Instead, they focus really hard on, let's say, two maybe uncomfortable truths.
Okay.
One is the sustained, almost tedious power of just doing things consistently. And the other is the really fundamental mental shifts you have to make before any of that action can actually, pay off big time.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that straight away. Because the central contrast here, and this is really crucial for anyone listening to grasp, is the difference between someone who's a high achiever and someone who's basically just waiting for luck.
Mm-hmm.
The sources really stress this. The high achiever isn't waiting around for the one big moment. Not at all. Their success is built on sustained, small, cumulative efforts.
Thousands of them.
Exactly. Thousands of choices, thousands of repetitions that honestly seem totally insignificant when you look at them one by one.
And this immediately shifts the whole dynamic, doesn't it? It moves away from waiting for something external, like the perfect market condition, the right investor, the perfect idea,
Right.
towards cultivating your own internal discipline. It strongly suggests that if you're just waiting for some massive flash of inspiration to, change everything, you're fundamentally misunderstanding how true growth actually works. It's math, almost.
Which leads us perfectly into the first and maybe the most challenging mindset shift these sources demand. And that's reframing those personal traits that, well, society often labels as negative or
Difficult.
Yes, specifically, the materials tackle head-on the habit of labeling people with really high standards, intense focus on detail, or just an unwavering commitment to quality control. We label them control freaks.
Oh, yeah. We hear that all the time, usually as a criticism, right? Someone wants precise language or insists on checking every tiny detail of a project.
And boom, they're called difficult or excessive.
Exactly. But these sources argue that those behaviors, they're actually not personality flaws.
Yep.
Not at all. They are essential requirements if you want world-class outcomes.
The insight there is just crucial. High standards, demanding execution, meticulous attention to detail. They're presented not as something you need to apologize for or fix,
Right.
but as an undeniable prerequisite for getting to that elite level of success. It makes you ask, if you tolerate average input, how can you possibly expect to produce superior quality output?
That makes sense. So if you want excellence, you have to stop seeing the necessary behaviors, even the ones that might make other people a bit uncomfortable, as some kind of character defect.
So that reframing, it turns what looks like a flaw into, well, a strategic necessity. But here's an important nuance I think we need to pull out from these sources.
Okay.
Where do they suggest the high achiever draws the line, between necessary high standards and just inefficient micromanagement? Because that second one, that's a recipe for paralyzing your team and yourself.
That's a really powerful distinction. And the sources do recognize that danger. The inefficiency trap is real. They argue that the high standards need to be applied primarily to the results and the process of your own output.
Ah, okay. Not just controlling others.
Right. Rather than solely being aimed at controlling every single action of other people. True world-class performers, they manage their own inputs relentlessly, sure, but they structure their environment so others can meet those high standards without feeling suffocated.
So it's about enabling, not just demanding.
Exactly. I mean, if your standards lead to zero output because you're stuck trying to perfect every tiny detail yourself, well, that's just perfectionism, isn't it? That's not world-class performance. The real focus has to be on leveraging those high standards to actually generate volume.
And generating volume.
Yeah.
That brings us perfectly to the core strategy described in these sources, which they frame really beautifully with this metaphor of golden BBs.
Yes. This is such a profound way to visualize it. If you think about success as, say, a target, most people are completely fixated on finding that single revolutionary silver bullet, right?
A magic solution.
Magic solution, the thing that will hit the bullseye instantly, solve every problem in one go. The sources are absolutely definitive on this. That is a myth. A total myth.
And here's where it gets really profoundly challenging for most people, I think. Success, according to this mindset, it's built on hundreds, maybe even thousands of these tiny golden BBs.
Yeah, tiny things.
We're talking about minuscule, incremental improvements, micro adjustments, small decisions, little cumulative advantages that honestly seem totally insignificant when you look at just one.
And if you really look at the sort of the math behind this, the search for that one big thing, the perfect moment, the perfect strategy, it's often just a really sophisticated way to procrastinate.
Interesting take.
The world-class mindset recognizes that those tiny advantages, those BBs, they compound exponentially. Think about a world-class musician.
Sure.
They don't just wait around their whole life hoping for the perfect inspired song to just pop into their head. No way. They spend thousands and thousands of hours practicing scales, refining finger positions, mastering tiny variations in rhythm.
The boring stuff.
The boring stuff. Each scale practice is a golden BB. So
Yeah.
when that great song finally does come, it's not because of luck. It's because those thousands of foundational, incremental efforts have made their execution basically flawless.
So this isn't just theory. It's a practical operational strategy. If success is built on volume and these tiny improvements, then the path to mastery itself has to fundamentally shift, away from just polishing one perfect piece of work.
It absolutely has to. The sources are very, very clear on this. The path to mastery needs not just effort, but a real commitment to consistent action and a high volume of output.
Volume, that's the essential ingredient here. We're often taught, culturally anyway, to prioritize perfectionism, aren't we? Don't release it until it's flawless. Don't share it until it's revolutionary.
Right, wait for perfection.
But these sources make a really strong case that high volume has to be prioritized over perfectionism. Why? Because the rapid feedback loop you get from high output. That is the true accelerator of learning. You simply cannot iterate if you don't ship something.
That does raise an important question, though, for the listener who's now thinking, okay, apply world-class standards and high volume.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting.
Right. How do the sources suggest managing the inevitable burnout, or just the decision fatigue that must come from constantly applying intense scrutiny to a massive amount of work?
That's the critical challenge, absolutely. And the sources address it. They distinguish between the standard and the scale.
Okay, standard versus scale.
The standard has to stay high. No compromising there. But the scale, the volume, demands efficiency. So the high achiever uses systems. They leverage tools. They make the execution of those golden BBs as automatic as possible.
Ah, so reducing the friction.
Precisely. Minimizing decision fatigue that way. They don't try to perfect the system itself every single day. They perfect their consistent use of a pretty good system. And by prioritizing volume, they accept that version 1.0 might fail, or at least be imperfect.
But that failure isn't the end.
No. That failure or that imperfection provides the data, the energy needed to make version 2.0 and 3.0 exponentially better.
And this is where we see that transition then, from just executing a strategy to genuine learning, real evolution. It goes way beyond just, accumulating information.
Yes. The source makes a really powerful, almost blunt statement here. It says that real learning and real evolution require much, much more than just being exposed to information.
Right.
Like, we can read every single book ever written on effective time management, right? But if our behavior doesn't change,
Yeah.
if we still procrastinate, if we still go to pointless meetings, have we actually learned anything functional?
Not really. Think about the huge gap between knowing how many calories are in something
Yeah.
and actually choosing the healthy meal. The knowledge is passive. The choice, that's the behavioral application. And that practical application, the deliberate act of changing one's behavior, that's the necessary ingredient. It's what converts passive data into functional evolutionary knowledge.
Otherwise, it's just mental clutter.
Exactly. Information alone, without that behavioral change, is just noise.
Okay, so we've got the strategy, the golden BBs.
Right.
We've got the execution high volume fueled by feedback. We've got the mechanism of learning actual behavioral change. But sustaining this kind of relentless, difficult path, that requires some serious fuel.
Oh, absolutely. The sources argue pretty forcefully that if you're aiming for world-class outcomes, you are, by definition, stepping outside the normal boundaries, outside what's considered easy or typical.
You're an outlier.
You are. And that kind of non-conformity, it requires a really deep level of internal conviction. Otherwise, the pull towards the average, towards the comfortable middle, will eventually drag you back.
And that conviction, the fuel that sustained you, they say it's found in authenticity, in internal validation. It means valuing your own expert opinion, your assessment of what quality requires more than you value external approval.
Think about it. If you're constantly adjusting your standards or your output or even your goals based on what other people think is achievable or appropriate or good enough,
You'll regress to the mean.
you will naturally gravitate back toward the mean because the mean is comfortable, it's approved of.
Hmm.
The sources just keep reminding us greatness requires non-conformity. It demands a willingness to stand apart and really fully embrace how difficult the journey ahead is going to be.
It sounds like the cost of admission, really. If everyone agreed with your approach, if your path felt easy and comfortable all the time,
It probably wouldn't be innovative.
right, it probably wouldn't be innovative or rigorous enough to actually produce world-class results.
Hmm.
You have to be willing to be seen as demanding, maybe even a little eccentric,
Mhm.
because your internal compass for quality is just set higher than almost everyone else's.
It forces you, really, to operate from a place of deep self-trust, recognizing that the external validation, the applause, the recognition that stuff might eventually arrive, maybe,
But it can't be the reason.
but it absolutely cannot be the reason you started the journey in the first place. The reason has to be that unshakable belief in the quality of your own standards and your own ability to execute those thousands of golden BBs day in, day out.
So what does this all boil down to for you, the listener?
Right.
Well, the core journey laid out in these sources seems really clear and quite pragmatic, actually. Success isn't like winning the lottery.
Definitely not.
It's a high-volume, behavior-driven, cumulative process, and it's fueled by self-belief and, crucially, a refusal to apologize for having the high standards needed for truly superior quality.
Yeah, it completely challenges that romantic idea of instant success, doesn't it? And replaces it with the perhaps less glamorous reality of compounding effort. It demands that you really confront the labels that society tends to throw at ambition.
And building on that final point, that greatness requires nonconformity, we want to leave you with one last thought to maybe explore this week.
Yeah, take a moment sometime soon, maybe reflect on your professional life or even your personal projects. Ask yourself, what existing standard or convention is there? It could be anything, a way you structure meetings, a traditional workflow, maybe even a personal belief about what you should be doing.
Something you just accept.
Something you accept, yeah. Something that currently feels necessary, maybe even comforting, but which you perhaps should actually scrutinize, challenge it, maybe even consider dismantling it, all in the spirit of that necessary nonconformity. Because often, that act of critical defiance, that's the trigger for reaching the next level of achievement.